Colonel Tanya Sharma, her neat uniform looking a bit out of place in the dusty government car, felt the Texas sun beating down through the windshield. The strong heat was a familiar annoyance after a week of tough training exercises at a far-off facility. She was an engineer, a leader, a woman who'd handled tricky supply problems in places much worse than this sun-baked highway. She was already thinking past the training drills to the meetings waiting for her in Austin, then the flight back to her research post where she specialized in making sure important buildings and bridges were super strong and safe. The engine hummed steadily, and the landscape was a blur of dry ground and wavy heat lines in the distance. She glanced at her speedometer, 64 in a 65 zone. She liked being exact, in her work and in her life. That's when red and blue lights suddenly flashed in her rearview mirror, a sharp, unwelcome break in the hot, quiet afternoon. An older, heavy-looking local patrol car was coming up fast, its shape getting bigger and more threatening with every second. Tanya's stomach dropped. She was a respected officer, a woman of color, and she knew, feeling tired just thinking about it, that sometimes her rank and how professional she was didn't matter as much as what people assumed just by looking at her. Don't forget to comment what place you are from and your thoughts on this crazy story about Colonel Tanya Sharma. Don't forget to hit that sub button as well. She signaled, pulled the car over onto the gravel shoulder, the tires making a loud crunch that seemed extra loud in the sudden quiet. She turned off the engine, took a deep breath, and put her hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, her movements calm, like she'd practiced. The patrol car pulled up sharply behind her, its engine idling with a deep rumble. The driver's side door opened, and Officer Mike Rourke got out. He looked like he belonged in this rough country, tall, tan by the sun, with mirrored sunglasses hiding his eyes. The way his jaw was set made him look like he was used to getting his way. His uniform was a bit wrinkled, his gun belt hung low, and he walked with a kind of cocky strut that seemed out of place but also totally expected. He walked slowly to her window, his boots kicking up little puffs of dust. He looked over her car, pausing on the official government license plates, before finally looking at her. Tanya lowered her window, and the hot air immediately rushed into the cooler car. "Good afternoon, officer," she said, her voice steady, not showing the nervousness she felt inside. "Is there a problem?" Rourke leaned down, putting his arm on the car roof. Her face looked weirdly bent in his sunglasses. He didn't answer right away, just stared, looking her over slowly, like he was checking if she was dangerous, not just making a routine traffic stop. The silence stretched on, filled only by the tick-tick-tick of her cooling engine and the far-off buzz of cicadas. "License and registration," he finally said, his voice flat and unfriendly. Tanya nodded, reaching slowly, deliberately, for her purse on the passenger seat. "Can I ask why you pulled me over, officer?" she asked again, keeping her tone polite but firm. He ignored her, his eyes fixed on her movements. She got out her military ID and her driver's license, along with the car's government registration, and handed them over. His thick, rough fingers brushed hers as he took the papers. He glanced at her military ID first, a quick look, surprise? Or maybe he looked down on her. Crossed his face before he turned to her driver's license. "Tanya Sharma," he read aloud, saying her name a little wrong. "Not from around here, are ya?" he asked, like it was a bad thing. "I'm here for a short time for training, officer," she replied. "I was doing 64 in a 65 zone." He finally looked up from her papers, his head tilted. "Saw you doing 72 back there, ma'am." That was a flat-out lie. Tanya felt a rush of anger, but pushed it down. Arguing with a hostile cop on a lonely road was a bad idea. "I think my cruise control was on 64, officer, but I'll watch it more closely," she said, picking her words with care. His lips curled into a smirk. "Cruise control, huh? Fancy," he sneered. "What kind of training brings your kind out here dressed like that?" He waved a hand at her uniform, the badges on her collar shining in the sunlight. That "your kind" remark hung in the air, clear as day. Tanya's training, all those years of dealing with prejudice calmly, took over. "I'm a colonel in the United States Army, officer. This is my duty uniform." Rourke chuckled, a dry, nasty sound. "I colonel?" "Right, sweetheart. And I'm Santa Claus. Now, Why don't you tell me what you're really doing out here? He leaned closer, his breath smelling like old coffee and something bitter. The sun beat down, and Tanya knew this was only the beginning. This guy didn't care about the truth. He just wanted to feel powerful and thought she was an easy mark. Her mind, always thinking strategy, started weighing her choices. None of them felt good. The heat, being alone out here, and the cops' obvious dislike. It was a bad mix. She knew she was in a tough spot, rank or no rank. Officer Rourke straightened up, his mirrored sunglasses still fixed on Tanya. The smirk was still on his face, maybe even bigger now, showing a cockiness that was almost hateful. "Step out of the car, ma'am," he ordered, his voice getting sharper. It wasn't a request. It was an order meant to show who was boss. Tanya paused for a split second. She knew her rights. He didn't really have a good reason to ask her out. But she also knew they were on a lonely road with no one around, and the officer looked like he could snap. Arguing about the law here could make things much worse. "Officer, is there a reason I need to get out?" she asked, her voice still pretty calm, but she felt a cold knot in her stomach. "I ask you to step out of the car," Rourke repeated, louder this time, his hand dropping, kind of casually, to rest on his gun. It wasn't a direct threat, but she got the message. Tanya unbuckled her seatbelt, her movements measured and deliberate. She opened the door and stepped onto the hot gravel, the heat hitting her right away from the ground. She stood tall. She was 5 foot, looking dignified, but Rourke seemed to take it as a dare, and he got more aggressive. He was about 4 inches taller and bigger, and he used his size to try and scare her. "Turn around." "Hands on the roof of the car," he barked. Tanya's jaw tightened. "Officer Rourke, I am a commissioned officer in the U.S. Army. I haven't done anything wrong. Why are you searching me?" Her voice was quiet but strong, and you could hear she meant business. Rourke took a step closer, getting right in her personal space. "Because I said so, Colonel," he sneered, saying Colonel like he didn't believe her. "You look jumpy. Hiding something? Folks around here don't like outsiders, stirring up trouble." He motioned for her to turn, getting impatient. Tanya did what he said, slowly turning and putting her hands on the hot metal of the car's roof. The sun burned her neck. She could feel him watching her, hear his gear jingle as he moved behind her. Then he was patting her down, way rougher than he needed to be. It wasn't a real search. It was just him trying to show power, to embarrass her. His hands stayed too long, scraped, poked. She gritted her teeth, furious, but also trying to figure out what to do next. He found nothing, of course. "Clean, huh?" he muttered, stepping back. "Let's see what's in the car." He didn't ask if he could. He just moved to the driver's door, yanked it open, and started digging around. Tanya watched, her reflection looking weird in the car's side mirror, as he threw her field manual on the floor, opened the glove compartment, his hands messing through everything in it. "What are you looking for, officer?" she asked, her voice tight. Rourke ignored her, moving to the passenger side, then the back. He opened her official Army duffel bag, pulled out her neatly folded work clothes, a small toolkit, and a locked laptop case. He grunted, not happy. "Lots of stuff for just training," he said, making it sound like a lie. He slammed the back door and moved to the trunk, forcing it open. Inside was more standard Army stuff, emergency food, and a locked hard case with special tools for her engineering work. He shook the locked case. "What's in here, huh? Something you're hiding?" Tanya felt a cold anger rise up. "That's government property, officer, and it's restricted. You're not allowed to open it." Rourke laughed. "Oh, I'm not, am I? Out here, I say what's allowed." He shook the handle again, then grunted and kicked the case. The sound was loud in the hot air. He didn't find anything to get her in trouble, and it just made him madder. He slammed the trunk so hard Tanya flinched. He stomped back to her, his face red under his tan. "You think you're so smart, huh? Coming through my county, thinking your fancy uniform and big city talk means anything." He was right up in her face, his voice a low growl. "Out here, you're nothing but what I say you are." His mirrored sunglasses were inches from her eyes. She could smell his sweat and old cigarette smoke. Tanya looked right at him, or at her own determined face reflected in his glasses. "I am Colonel Tanya Sharma, U.S. Army," she said, each word sharp and cold. "And you are going too far, Officer Rourke." His face twisted up. For a second, she thought he might hit her. Instead, he grabbed her arm roughly. "You're coming with me," he snarled. "We'll figure this out at the station." Not cooperating, acting fishy. "I'll come up with something." His grip was like a vice. This was getting worse than just him misusing his power. It was a real threat to her freedom and her job. Her mind raced. He was out of control, acting on his own prejudices and a hurt ego. The station in a town like this, with a cop like him, wouldn't be fair. It would be a trap. Tanya felt a cold fear mixed with hot anger as Officer Rourke's fingers dug into her arm. When he threatened to take her to the station and think of something, it was clear this wasn't about any traffic ticket anymore. It was personal, him trying to show power because he didn't like her, and she wasn't scared. "Take your hand off me, officer," Tanya said, her voice very quiet but dangerous. It wasn't a question. It was an order. She was used to giving orders, but she knew her rank didn't mean much to him right now. Rourke just squeezed harder, a mean smile on his face. "Or what, Colonel? Gonna call your army pals?" he sneered, his face way too close. "They're a long way off." Tanya knew she had to calm things down, but not by giving up her rights or risking her safety. Fighting back against an armed cop, even if she was right, was super risky, especially for her. But just giving in? No way. Her mind, used to quick thinking and fast decisions, went through her choices. The heat was awful. The only sounds were Rourke's heavy breathing and a truck somewhere in the distance. She decided what to do. "Officer Rourke," she started, her voice changing, almost friendly, but still firm underneath. "Before this goes any further, I have to let my command know what's happening. I'm on duty, traveling for work, and there are rules for this kind of thing." Rourke scoffed. "Rules? Lady, the only rules out here are mine." But for a split second, he looked a little unsure. He was a bully, used to people in his small town doing whatever he said. Hearing about command and rules from someone so calm might have made him think twice, just a little. Tanya slowly, very deliberately, reached for the pocket with her work phone. Rourke's eyes narrowed, and his grip on her arm got tighter, like a vice. "What do you think you're doing?" he snapped. "I'm making an official call, officer," she said, looking him straight in the eye. "You can let me, or you can explain to my bosses why you stopped an officer from making a required report when she was being held for no good reason." She used those official-sounding words on purpose. They sounded serious, like they came from a big system he couldn't control. Rourke hesitated. He didn't seem so cocky now, probably thinking about how good it felt to push her around versus the chance, even if he thought it was small, of real trouble. "Go on then," he finally sneered, letting go of her arm with a little push. "Call whoever. See who cares about some bossy woman playing soldier." He clearly didn't think anyone would help her, still sure he was in charge. Tanya got her phone, her fingers surprisingly steady. She scrolled through her contacts to Major Kenji Tanaka. He was her main contact at a very important operations center. He knew her, respected her, and really understood how the army worked. The phone rang once, then twice. Each ring sounded loud, in the tense quiet. Rourke watched her, arms crossed, a smug look on his face, like he expected her call to go nowhere. Then a voice, crisp and professional, cut through the line. "Tanaka." Tanya felt a huge wave of relief, but she kept her face straight. "Major Tanaka, this is Colonel Sharma," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I need help right away. I'm on Highway 71, about 20 miles east of Garrison, Texas. A local cop, Officer Mike Rourke, badge number 4812, from the Garrison County Sheriff's Department, has stopped me. He searched me and my car for no good reason, and now he's threatening to arrest me without cause." She gave him the facts, short and professional, just like a field report. On the other end, Major Tanaka listened without saying anything. When she finished, there was a short pause. Then his voice came back, no warmth, just business. "Colonel, are you in danger right now?" Things are tense, Major. Officer Rourke is acting unpredictably and is very hostile. Tanaka's voice got harder. Got it, Colonel.
Put your phone on speaker.
Let me talk to this officer. Tanya nodded, though he couldn't see her. Officer Rourke, she said, holding the phone out to him. Major Tanaka from the Department of the Army wants to talk to you. Rourke's smirk vanished. He looked at the phone, then at her. Real surprise, maybe even alarm, showed in his eyes. He clearly hadn't expected this. He probably thought her command was just some local sergeant she knew. Department of the Army sounded much more serious. He hesitated, then grabbed the phone from her. Yeah, who's this? He barked into it, trying to sound tough again, but it sounded a bit fake. The voice that came from the phone speaker wasn't hesitant at all. It was the voice of someone used to giving orders and being listened to, a voice that sounded like it had real government power behind it. This is Major Kenji Tanaka, United States Army Strategic Operations Command. Who am I speaking to? Rourke stood up straighter. The smirk was completely gone, replaced by a look of pure shock. This is Officer Rourke, Garrison County, he stammered. All his toughness disappeared like air from a leaky tire. The Texas sun suddenly felt even hotter, and the silence seemed deeper. The power had definitely shifted on that lonely road. Major Kenji Tanaka's voice, coming loud from the phone, cut through the hot Texas air like a sharp knife. Officer Rourke, badge number 4812, is that right? Tanaka's voice was ice cold. There was no way to misunderstand him or wiggle out of it. Rourke, holding the phone like it was a poisonous snake, got pale under his tan. Even his sunglasses couldn't hide the fear in his eyes. Why, yes, sir. Major, sir, he managed to say. Calling him sir showed he knew things had changed. Tanya watched him, her face hard to read, but inside, she felt a little bit of dark satisfaction. It wasn't just her word against his anymore. Officer Rourke, Tanaka went on, his voice like a hammer hitting with official rules. You are holding Colonel Tanya Sharma, who is on active duty in the U.S. Army and traveling on official orders. Colonel Sharma is a very respected engineer working on an important national security project. Her trip right now is vital for her mission. Can you please tell me what good reason you had to stop her and search her and her government car for no reason? Hearing national security project hung in the air. It meant this was much bigger than a simple traffic stop. Rourke swallowed hard. You could see his Adam's apple move. Well, sir, she was, speeding. And her car, it looked suspicious. His excuse sounded weak even to him. All his earlier cockiness was gone, replaced by a desperate try to make himself look okay. Suspicious? Tanaka sounded like he couldn't believe it. Officer, Colonel Sharma is in a registered government car with clear markings. She's in uniform. She showed you her proper military ID. What exact, clear facts made you think her car or she herself were suspicious enough to search everything and threaten to arrest her, especially after she told you she was a high-ranking military officer? Rourke stammered. I have to make sure I'm safe, and she wasn't cooperating. Tanya had been nothing but calm. She'd only argued verbally, based on her rights. Tanaka didn't even bother to address that particular lie. Officer Rourke, do you know about Title 18, U.S. Code, Section 1385, about messing with military folks doing their job? Do you also know about Department of Defense Directive 5525.5, which explains how civilian police should deal with military people? Hearing all those specific laws and rules was like getting hit over and over. Rourke looked totally confused, like he was in way over his head. He was just a small-town cop used to pushing around locals, not dealing with federal laws and orders from the Pentagon.
No, sir.
I wasn't trying to interfere. You have interfered, officer, Tanaka said flatly. You might have messed up an important mission that's on a tight schedule, and you violated the rights of a U.S. Army colonel. Now, I want you to give Colonel Sharma her phone back right now. Then you will give her back all her papers and let her go without bothering her anymore. Understand? Rourke's hand was shaking as he gave the phone back to Tanya. His face showed a mix of growing horror and helpless anger. He'd picked the wrong person to mess with, and how big a mistake that was hitting him hard. Tanya took her phone, looking steadily at Rourke. Yes, Major, she said into the phone. Understood. Good, Tanaka replied. Colonel, I'm going to report this to the Army's lawyers and file official complaints with the Texas Department of Public Safety and the Garrison County Sheriff's Department. I'll need a full report from you when you get where you're going. Are you okay to keep driving? Yes, Major. I am, Tanya confirmed, though she was still keyed up. Excellent. Officer Rourke, I bet your sheriff will hear from my office and probably from the federal government within the hour. You might want to start thinking about what you're going to say. With that, Major Tanaka hung up. The silence that followed was heavy and tense. Rourke stood frozen for a second, his face pale. He looked from Tanya to the empty road, like he was looking for a way out that wasn't there. Then he moved stiffly, like a robot, to get her license and registration from his patrol car. He handed them back without a word, not looking at her. All his earlier cockiness was gone, replaced by the slow realization of what a huge mess he'd made. Tanya took her papers, her face firm. May I go now, Officer Rourke? She asked, her voice cool and steady. He just nodded, dumbly, stepping back from her vehicle. She got in her car, started it up, and without looking back, pulled smoothly onto the highway. She left Officer Mike Rourke standing alone on the dusty roadside, the Texas sun beating down on his suddenly very small world. As she drove, the first feeling of relief was quickly followed by a cold anger. It shouldn't take a call to the Pentagon just to be treated with basic respect and within the law. What about people who didn't have a Major Tanaka they could call? That thought was scary. But for now, she focused on the road, her mission, and the detailed report she was going to write. This wasn't over. In many ways, it was just starting. But one thing was sure. Officer Rourke was going to face the music. The hum of the car engine was a comforting sound as Colonel Tanya Sharma drove further away from that lonely spot where Officer Rourke's power had fallen apart. The AC felt good, so different from the awful heat and the stress of the whole thing. Her hands, however, were still gripping the steering wheel hard, her knuckles white. The first rush of adrenaline was fading, leaving her feeling cold anger and very, very tired. She was a soldier and an engineer, trained for tough situations. But the way Rourke was so casually mean, like it was normal and he could get away with anything, had shaken her more than dangerous battlefields ever had. It was how ordinary his bad behavior seemed, how sure he was he wouldn't get in trouble, that was so disturbing. She drove for about 20 minutes, keeping an eye on the road and her rearview mirror, half expecting Rourke or one of his buddies to show up again. But the highway stayed clear, the Texas landscape stretching out, empty and huge. She got to a small, pretty clean rest stop, pulled in, parked, and finally let herself take a real breath. She leaned her head back against the seat, closing her eyes. She kept seeing Rourke's face in her mind, changing from cocky and arrogant to shocked and scared. Yeah, there was some satisfaction in that, but mostly she thought about the bigger picture. This wasn't just about one bad cop. It was about an attitude, a whole way of thinking that let cops get away with this stuff. Her work phone buzzed. It was Major Tanaka. "Colonel, how are things?" he said. His voice was still all business, but she could hear he was a little worried. "I'm safe, Major. I just pulled into a rest stop to calm down." Nothing else happened, Tanya told him. Good. The Army lawyers are already writing up the official complaint. We also talked to the sheriff of Garrison County, a guy named Henderson. He sounded worried. Actually, very worried, especially when we mentioned the Department of the Army and possibly breaking federal civil rights laws. Tanya gave a small, dry laugh.
You bet.
Thanks, Major. For everything. You don't have to thank me, Colonel. We take care of our people. And honestly, acting like that is an insult to everyone who wears a uniform, military or police, and does their job right. Rourke picked a fight with the wrong person. He sure did, Tanya agreed. I'll get my full written report to you by 8 a.m. tomorrow. Got it. Drive safe, Tanya. It was rare for Tanaka to use her first name, and it meant a lot. The call ended. Tanya sat in her quiet car, the Texas sun still beating down outside. She knew Tanaka and the Army's lawyers would make sure Rourke got in trouble. But she started thinking about people who didn't have that kind of help. What happened to a regular person who couldn't call someone high up in the military? How many people had Rourke and cops like him, bothered, scared, or worse, without ever getting caught? What happened today made something very clear to her. Her rank and her uniform weren't just signs of her job. In times like this, they were like a shield. And maybe a tool she could use. A responsibility she had. Meanwhile, back on Highway 71, Officer Mike Rourke wasn't standing on the dusty roadside anymore. He was in his patrol car, speeding toward Garrison, his mind a mess of panic and anger. The Pentagon. Federal government. His sheriff very worried. His career, which he always thought was safe in his little town, was suddenly about to fall apart. He grabbed his radio, his voice tight. "Dispatch, get Sheriff Henderson on for me. It's urgent." The dispatcher, a calm woman named Dottie, who'd known Rourke for years, sounded surprised. "Everything okay, Mike? You sound scared." "Just get him, Dottie," he snapped. A few minutes later, Sheriff Henderson's rough voice came over the radio. "Rourke, what in the world is going on? I just got a call from some major at the damn Pentagon saying you were harassing an Army colonel. You better have a really good reason." Rourke's whole world, which he thought was so secure, was falling apart. "Sheriff, it's not what it looks like." She was speeding, acting weird. "I was just doing my job." "Your job?" Henderson yelled back, the radio buzzing with how mad he was. "Your job is not to get the federal government mad at this department. Get yourself to my office right now. And you better hope that colonel doesn't decide to sue us in federal court, because if she does, you could lose your pension, your badge, even your freedom." Rourke felt a chill. He turned off the radio, his hands shaking. He'd always thought no one could touch him, that his badge let him do whatever he wanted in Garrison County. He had made a huge, terrible mistake. He hadn't just pulled over some woman. He'd pulled over someone who represented a power much bigger than his, and he'd totally misjudged how determined she was and who she knew. As he drove, a new, colder fear started to creep in. This Colonel Sharma, she wasn't the kind of person to just let this go. He'd seen it in her eyes. He had messed up badly, and now he was going to pay for it. He remembered his nasty jokes, how roughly he'd treated her, how he'd kicked her case. Every memory felt like another step towards disaster. The drive to Garrison, usually quick and easy, felt like the longest trip of his life. The Texas sun, which earlier felt like it backed up his power, now felt like a harsh spotlight showing all his mistakes and how he'd misused his authority. The effects of that roadside stop were just starting to spread out, and Officer Mike Rourke was right in the middle of it. His try to scare and embarrass her had blown up in his face, big time, and now the trouble was coming for him like a speeding train.